She's almost done it all, from reporting to anchoring to politics. But these days, Jill Miller is selling houses as a real estate agent. I had a chance to talk with her for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. Jill, you know, I've known you for years, going back to your days as an education reporter at Channel 5.
Right.
And you know, I would always go across the street to the Charleston County School District for the Monday morning
You were
meetings.
always there.
Yes.
You were always there.
And you know, I haven't seen you much, you know, since then. But tell me, how are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. Selling real estate right now with Carolina One.
Yes.
And all over the Tri-County area. And of course the market has picked up tremendously. It is really becoming a seller's market. So if anybody out there was wanting to sell during the bust, I like to say, when the market was so bad, this is the time to put your house on the market now, because inventory is low and so are interest rates.
And you touched on this a little bit, but how is it going as a real estate agent?
It's going great. It is going great. I've got listings all over the Tri-County area. As I said, I primarily focus on downtown and East Cooper because that's where I've lived and and know that area best. But you know, after being a reporter for so long, you know the entire area. I've been everywhere and have covered everything and have been, you know, from Monk's Corner to Edisto Island to Buford to everywhere. So that kind of gives me an advantage, I think, that I know the areas very well.
And from what I read too, you actually got your real estate license in 1991.
I did. I had been married about 3 or 4 years. I had just had my only child, my daughter. She was about 7, 8 months old, and I went and got my real estate license about in March of '91. And you know, got the first year's license, and they make you come back and get your permanent license and did all that. And did a little bit of selling as an on-site agent for Brickyard Plantation, exactly. And that's my husband's business, is that kind of business, construction and development, real estate. And he wanted me to get my license for that reason, so I would understand some of what he's doing, but it's a whole different ballgame when you're in it, like I'm in it now, and working for a company, and you're doing resales and not on site. But I love each aspect of the business. It's great.
That is awesome. Well, during the 1990s too, I also read that you opened Jill Miller Interiors.
My goodness, yes I did. Boy, you have done your research.
I have.
Oh wow, that is really, you have hit on something. That is really my passion.
Oh great.
Is interior design, and I think a lot of women. Yes, I think a lot of women are like this. And you're a nester. We're always making our nest, and our homes are very important, which goes back to the real estate angle as well, because I know how important it is to get that home that you love, and that's what makes me happiest. It really is. But yes, I opened Jill Miller Interiors. I was doing some clubhouses and some model homes for developments, and have kind of gotten out of that now. There's not, one of the first things to go when the economy gets bad is, you know, is interior design. And really mainly had it for myself so that I could have access to wholesale sites that I would not have access to without a license.
And you know, you've done news anchoring and reporting.
Yes.
And you know, of course, you've done real estate.
Yes.
But a couple of years ago, you actually, for 2 years from what I remember, you actually were the director of elections for Charleston County.
Right. I was a director of the Board of Elections and Voter Registration, and during that time we actually combined both offices. There used to be just a voter registration office and then an election office. We combined them. We moved the office to where it is now. Renovated those offices. It was during 2004 was the year. I started in 2003 and left in 2005. But it was primarily to get this on board and up and running. It was an incredible experience, because during all of the combining of the offices, updating everything, putting us online within the department itself, we were also putting on 18 elections.
Wow.
Right. Right.
And
And we still had what I call those old boats, you know, the huge old voting machines
Right.
that were so outdated that you couldn't even get parts for them. And so I was lucky enough to hire one of the men that was an engineer at 4 and 5, channels 4 and 5. And as someone once told me, he is an engineer's engineer. That
Right.
if you needed, he not only could program all of the stuff that we needed to be programmed
Yes.
on the computer, and that was just starting, that aspect of it with the computer input, but also with those big machines, there were no parts available. So if we needed, you know, in doing these elections and hauling those things out, Dave was able to, and it's still, I understand he's still there,
Oh, okay.
that if you needed a part, he could make it.
Yes.
So he really saved me, and so we got through that year, and then the new machines came in the following year. But it was an experience. It was, I thought working in television was time
I was gonna-
consuming, but this was 24/7 the entire year. It really was.
And after all those years in reporting and anchoring in real estate, why did you dabble in politics?
Why?
Yeah.
I think that's always been a passion of mine. Actually, I got started. I'm from Atlanta originally, born and raised.
Yes.
You don't find too many Atlanta natives anymore. I'm one, but I'm not a native anymore because I don't live there. But I went to the University of Georgia.
Yeah.
But I started in my journalism career at the Atlanta Constitution. And this is before computers and what we called cold type. At
Right.
the time, they had hot type.
Oh, yes.
And I was a, what do they call it now? Not a newsboy, but it was where you ran the
Copy.
A copy boy.
Yeah,
Thank you. Exactly.
yeah.
But I was a copy girl,
Okay.
and then what I wanted to do was to get into the newsroom and see what they did, see
Yeah.
if that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it really got in my blood, and that's how I started. Actually, was as a newspaper reporter. I did some reporting and writing for them, and my city editor, who I had great respect for, came up to me one day and he said, "Jill, what are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What?" And he looked out over the newsroom and, you know, and waved his hand. He said, "Every one of these people, every one of these reporters right here, if they were in your business, if they were in your shoes,
Sure.
excuse me, they would be heading into television. That is where it's at, not in newspaper." And he was right, because at the time it was during the mid to late 70s, and there were a lot of newspapers that were going out of business or consolidating, like the Post and Courier did.
Yes.
Eventually.
Right.
And right after I left, the Atlanta Journal and Constitution consolidated, where at one time they were separate, totally separate papers. So newspapers were downsizing, so to speak. And so he was right. And when I listened, I knew who to listen to.
Yes.
And I listened to my news director, my city editor, and that's how the reporting bug got in me.
Wow.
So I look at myself as a real reporter, and being on TV as just a medium in which to get that story out.
Yes.
If there was no television, I'd be working for the newspaper. Does that make sense? Where a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of girls, a lot of people coming out of journalism school, and I don't mean to, but they want, their primary interest is being on television
Right now.
You know, right? And whereas my primary interest was getting that story, and that the best way to get that story out there was in television.
Yes.
So that's how I got into TV.
But now I want to back it up to politics. You once
Okay.
worked for the South Carolina Republican Party Commerce Caucus.
Yes, I did
Talk to me
that.
about your experience
Oh
there.
my goodness, that was a tough one, because I'll
Okay.
tell you, we were doing like a round table type thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
actually it was looking for donations to the party. It just so happened that the year that I was doing that was in 2009.
Wow.
Now, what happened in 2009? The economy just flattened.
Yeah.
And so we did get some donations, but not like we had hoped to. But everybody was running around like a chicken with their heads cut off,
I'm
not
sure.
knowing what the economy was doing. Banks were not making loans at the time. Of course, nobody was saying that.
Right.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
20, yeah.
And so it was tough. People were hanging on to their cash, and I don't blame them. But still very involved in in politics. I have a political club that I'm involved with, politically conservative club, and just kind of keeping my hand in. One of the things that we didn't mention, when I left the Journal-Constitution, part of my job when I was there was being like the assistant for their capital bureau. The state capitol and the legislature is headquartered, of course, in Atlanta. And it was just a mile and a half, 2 miles down the street from the newspaper. And during the legislative session, from January 1st to the end of March, ours is only 3 months, not 6 months like South Carolina. The Atlanta Constitution would set up a bureau inside the Capitol, and I ran that bureau. And so that's what really piqued my interest.
Really?
So when I got out of college, I was no longer with the newspaper, because all this time that I was doing this, I was still going to school. And so once I got my degree, I went and worked for the Speaker of the House as his information officer in Georgia. And it was quite an experience for about 8-9 months. And so that's where I really cut my teeth. You've got to have it in your blood, I think. And but that's where I really cut my teeth on politics, was there.
And let's continue with television news.
Okay.
Everyone in Charleston knows that you actually had a stint at Channel 4 as a reporter.
Yes.
Can you share me your great memories of working there?
Oh my gosh, we had a wonderful news director who had come from New York, from one of and that's the #1 market, in the nation. And they run those local stations like they are literally network-owned stations. And we were lucky enough to get him down here as the news director. He started in Charleston about the same time that I did in 1985, Don Feldman.
That's right.
And he covers news like I like to cover news, which is covering news and not going out and doing what I call puff stories or feature stories. I'm an animal lover, but I'm not interested in going and doing a story on the doggy hotel that just opened up, or the pet daycare center. That's not my idea of news. And Don Feldman was exactly that kind of person. We were on the same page as far as what news was and investigating all of that. And he was wonderful to work for. He was dynamite. He knew what news was and how to get it. And I used to tell my friends, they would say from Atlanta and elsewhere, they would say, "Jill, what have you done? Why are you going back into TV of all things?" And I said, "You don't understand. I'm in Charleston. Well, first of all, I'm at a station that is run like a network station, like what we call an owned and operated station by the network. We had all the bells and whistles. We had everything that we needed to get the job done. And had a great news director leading us. And then on top, so I'm working at a network, like a network station. I've got a beat that I love where there is real news coming out of it. And then on top of that, I get to live in Charleston. So I have the best of both worlds. And they said, well, we understand now. And you'll see that a lot of the people who have started out in television here in the local market, maybe at other stations, but if they are not going anywhere because of family and connections and all of that, they usually end up at Channel 5. And that's part of the Channel 5 strength, is that you have people who are connected to the community and know community people.
And you touched on Channel 4 and Channel 5, obviously.
Well, what brought me here, I moved from Atlanta to, well, actually, in television, we used to call ourselves, we were the new migrant workers. And people who were interested, your whole goal in being a television reporter was to work your way up into one of the top 10 or top 20 markets. Those were the prestigious markets. That was where you were paid well. A lot of those were owned and operated network stations as well. And so that was your goal, if that was your career path. And so you started off at small stations, small markets, and then worked your way up. I started off in Johnson City, Tennessee, at the Tri-Counties, and in Tennessee up in the northeast section.
Okay.
And I was a one-man band at the time. I'm really dating myself. I shot film.
Yeah.
And then if I wanted to do a stand-up, I threw that camera on the tripod.
Just like this?
Just like this, and did my stand-up. So it came back and edited my film and all of that. We didn't have video. Right before I left, we changed to video.
Wow.
Then I went from there to Spartanburg.
Right.
Worked in Spartanburg. From there to Atlanta, and worked for a cable news company that was the competition at the time of CNN. And unfortunately, we were in Ted Turner's backyard, and he wasn't real happy about that.
I'm sure.
And we were the ones that started the 25 after the hour and the 55 after the hour.
Oh, yes.
Local break-in news, and he wasn't real happy at seeing his competition on his headline news network during the local break-in.
Yes.
And so he bought us up and shut us down.
Wow.
Well, and so it threw a lot of people out of work.
Right.
Not just me, but I mean we had networks or bureaus all over the world actually. So a lot of people were thrown out of work, and that's how I came down here. And it just so happened that my news director that hired me had worked. He was one of those that was thrown out of work.
Oh,
he was an executive producer for the Satellite News Network in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
He too was looking for work. He landed on his feet as the news director at Channel 2, and this is back in the mid-'80s.
80s, yes.
And so we recognized each other by that contact. And so I worked for them for about two and a half years, was their anchor.
And talk to me more about that.
Well, I got to know the community. I was, a reporter, weekend anchor,
Right.
and then moved into the anchor seat
Right.
for the weeknights, 6 and 11, Monday through Friday. And it was great, but I have to tell you, it can get a little boring
Yes.
if you're not out there reporting.
Yes.
And I think that's what kind of separates reporters from people who just want to be on TV. I love doing it both.
Yes.
And
You're good at it.
And thank you. And and then after my 2 years, I actually met my husband while I was on the job and got married and decided that I wanted to retire, or thought I was retiring, and I did for about 10 years. And got married, and got married in '87, had my
Okay.
daughter in 1990, and then went back on the air at Channel 5, I think in 1998.
Yeah.
And stayed there, and was just delighted to be back on, and thrilled that I was hired there and was working for such a great news director.
Yeah.
So did some of my best work there.
That's awesome.
That if there's a shining example or shining star in my career, it would be working for him.
Yes.
At Channel 5
Yeah.
during those circumstances and under that particular, not only news director, but there was a different general manager there,
yeah.
a different owner, and all of that. It's not like it is now.
You're right about
Okay.
that. But let's talk about college.
Okay.
You touched on this earlier. You were a student at the University of
At
Georgia.
the University of Georgia.
I am wondering actually, who was Jill Miller as a college student?
Jill Miller was a very confused college student her first 2 years.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of kids out there. You go in to your advisor when you're 18 and you're an incoming freshman, and they look at you over the table and they say, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And you're going, my gosh, because you're having to pick a major.
Right.
I had no idea. idea. So I picked journalism. Simply, my mother had some influence on that, but I love to write.
Oh, good.
I really wanted to be a writer. And so journalism was looked to be that outlet. Well, after, your first 2 years of college is almost a repeat of high school.
That's true.
And I did take some beginning, like Journalism 101 and those courses.
Yes.
But then after 2 years, I said, I'm going to take a hiatus. Like they do in England, where they had that off year between high school and college.
Yes.
I took my off year after my sophomore year at Georgia, and came back home and started working. I want to see if this is what I really want to do, and the only way to do that is to get into the newsroom. And so that's why I went in as a copy girl, and everybody laughed at me, and I didn't care.
Right.
I would have gone in and emptied trash cans.
Sure.
I wanted to get into the newsroom, into the atmosphere, see what it was like, be part of it. And I was a copy girl for maybe a month, and then they had a receptionist opened for the Constitution. So I was right there in the middle of the newsroom. I was kind of like their Girl Friday, answered the phones, all of that. And then evolved into writing stories. I went out and found my own stories And those are some of the greatest people that I worked with and love to this day, and really helped me get a start and taught me how to report. And that's something that I don't know that you can be taught
These
necessarily.
days.
You know, it's more than who, what, when, where, and why.
Right.
Yeah, and how.
Well, that's true. Describe to me the following in one word, really quickly: real estate.
Real estate. Oh my goodness. To me, that is owning your own home, having your own nest.
Yes.
And a home is very different than a house. A house is investment property. A home is where your family is, and the roof over your head, and where your family lives and grows, and you raise your children and you build your life, and with your spouse and your children, and it's an honor for me. With my interior design connection. And the reason I did that was because I'm a nester, and I wanted to have the access to the wholesale sites that I would not have access to as just as a regular customer. So finding someone, my home is very important.
Sure.
Finding people, their homes that they're going to live in and raise their children. I just closed on a house with a couple who were newly married.
Wow.
They had an apartment, and this was their first house. And they were so excited.
I bet.
And they thrilled to death, and it just tickled me to death to do that and see their faces light up, and so excited about, they were in there painting and everything as soon as it closed. And just thrilled to have their own home.
Right.
And they were making a home out of it.
Yes.
On the other end of the spectrum, I have a client who is retiring. He works for the school district up in somewhere in New Jersey.
Okay.
And he and his wife both work for the school district. They are retiring.
Wow.
This year in May. I have been working with him for about 8-9 months. And they came down during the spring break, and in about 2 hours we found them a home.
Wow.
And I'm not sure that they have ever been homeowners before,
Okay.
but they are moving out of their comfort zone, and I mean the town that they're in and their family, and moving down here, and it's to a nice little small home, wonderful yard. They are so thrilled.
Wow.
They're as thrilled as the newlyweds.
Sure.
And then there's everyone in between. So it's very meaningful. It really is.
One word to describe Jill Miller.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think like most women, I wear a lot of hats.
Sure you do.
Wife, mother, community, activist for lack of a better term.
Sure.
Conservative, very conservative. I think that we all should have a voice, and if you don't get out and vote, and then you complain, it's your fault. That type thing. And it doesn't matter who you're voting for, but you have no leg to stand on if you didn't go to the voting booth and cast your ballot.
Yeah.
And so very, very interested in that. Former journalist. And real estate agent.
Yes.
And someone who is also still dabbles in interior design.
That is awesome.
So, and also what I like to say about myself overall, when you take all of those hats, I get things done.
You do.
Yeah, and you have seen me. You have seen me in action.
That's right.
I get things done.
And you don't play.
And I don't play games. And I cut right through the stuff. And I get things done. And so there goes my phone right now. And so, and that has also been good in real estate as well. I get things done just like I did in journalism.
And very quickly, your future, what do you see next?
I'm staying in real estate. I'm with a company that I absolutely adore, Carolina One. They are by far, they're just incredible.
Yes, they are.
Very, very happy. And I see myself staying in real estate. And just, and
No return to TV?
Oh, no. Oh, no. What I see in television is a lot of breaking news, meaning fires, wrecks, ambulance chasing. There's really not much real news coverage. And I'm sorry if I'm offending people. What I'm seeing on television is not much real news reporting.
Okay.
A lot of it is, let's open up the Post and Courier, see what's in there, and then we're going to go redo it ourselves. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just down here, it's in every market.
Yeah.
So even Atlanta, they do the same thing, but that's not reporting. I want to go out and find my own stories. I want to be ahead of the newspaper in town.
Absolutely.
And breaking my own stories. And I don't see that happening very much. So no, I don't see me going back into journalism at all. But those talents or those experiences and the things that I used as a reporter are always come in handy throughout my life and whatever I'm doing at the time.
Well, Jill Miller, was so great talking to you.
Thank you so much. This has been an honor, Quintin.